Every morning, as the first golden rays of sunlight spilled through the tall acacia trees of Enleti National Park, something strange would happen at the main gate. There she was again, a lioness, alone, always in the same spot, always at the same time. She didn't roar, she didn't charge, she didn't even try to come closer. She just stood there, silent and powerful, pacing slowly in front of the heavily guarded entrance, her golden eyes fixed on the rangers behind the steel barrier. To most people, it might have looked like a random, odd coincidence. But Commander Rico, the head of security at the park, knew better. After decades spent protecting wildlife, he could tell when something wasn't right. And this lioness, she wasn't behaving like a wild animal. Not at all. Lions didn't approach people. They didn't come back to the same human place day after day. They kept their distance, stayed hidden in the tall grass of the savannah. But this lioness? She kept returning, like clockwork. Rico's gut told him there was more to this than met the eye. And so, with tension growing among his team, he made a call that would change everything. He reached out to someone he trusted, Dr. Marcus Elliott, a renowned zoologist from a nearby wildlife reserve. If anyone could make sense of this, it was Elliott. When Dr. Elliott got the call, he didn't hesitate, but as he made the long drive to Nleti, a thought crept into his mind, one he couldn't shake. Was this lioness trying to tell them something? When Elliott arrived at the park, he immediately noticed how tense things were. The rangers weren't their usual calm selves. They were on edge, eyes locked on the front gate, hands resting on their tranquilizer, guns. Rico didn't waste time. He led Elliott to the guard post, where the lioness had appeared for over a week now. And there she was, standing in that same spot, just like always. Elliott watched her carefully. She wasn't snarling, she wasn't baring her teeth. Instead, she paced slowly, her powerful shoulders rippling under her tawny coat. Every few steps, she'd stop and let out a low rumbling sound. Not aggressive, not warning. It sounded almost mournful. And her eyes, they weren't wild with rage. They were filled with something much harder to describe. Pain. Maybe even desperation. Rico leaned closer and whispered, "She never comes any closer, but she won't leave either. Every day just like this." Elliott nodded slowly, his mind racing. He asked for detailed logs, exact times, behaviors, sounds. Then he set up cameras and audio devices near the gate. His instincts told him she wasn't here to hunt or threaten. She was trying to communicate. This was the only way she knew how. Later, that night, as Elliott reviewed the footage, one frame stopped him cold. The lioness was standing in the dawn light, looking straight into the lens, her eyes calm, steady, unblinking. It didn't feel like he was looking at a wild animal. It felt like she was looking back. "She's not a threat," Elliott said quietly, turning to Rico. "She's asking for help." Rico frowned, skeptical. "Help? From us?" Elliott's voice was firm. "Tomorrow morning we follow her, wherever she leads us." Because now, the real question wasn't whether they were in danger. It was what they would find at the end of her silent plea. The next morning, just before sunrise, the air around Nleti was still and heavy with anticipation. Hidden behind the trees near the gate, Elliott and a small team of rangers waited in total silence. Then, like clockwork, she appeared. The lioness stepped out from the brush with slow, deliberate grace. Her body moved like a poem, fluid and strong. She reached her usual spot, let out that same low, drawn-out moan, then turned her head slightly. It was almost like she was checking to see if someone was watching. "She's waiting for us," Elliott whispered. Then, without looking back, she turned and began walking into the savannah. "That's the sign," he said. The team followed her at a safe distance, moving in pairs, their boots crunching softly against dry grass and dirt. The lioness didn't acknowledge them, but she seemed to know they were there. And strangely, she didn't seem to mind. It was as if she trusted them. She led them through thorny brush and across sun-baked earth. At times, she would pause, ears twitching, tail flicking with alertness. She was still a wild creature after all, but there was no aggression in her movements, just urgency. "This isn't random," Elliot muttered under his breath. "She knows exactly where she's going." After nearly an hour of trekking, they reached a bend in the land where the river curved sharply. Recent rains had eaten away at the riverbank, leaving a jagged edge of unstable earth. The lioness climbed onto a rocky outcrop and froze. She stared down into something they couldn't yet see. Her body stiffened. And then she let out a sound none of them had heard before, a low, drawn-out moan that seemed filled with sorrow. Something was down there. The team approached slowly, weapons lowered, eyes wide with confusion and concern. The lioness didn't move. She stood like a statue, her gaze fixed. Elliot stepped forward, motioning for everyone to stay quiet. The sound of rushing water filled the air. But then, beneath it, something else emerged. A faint noise, a whimper, soft, weak, and undeniably real. Then, as if confirming what they all feared, the lioness turned to them. Her eyes met Elliot's, not wild, not warning, but pleading. She wasn't here to threaten. She had brought them to this place to save something. One of the rangers dropped to his knees and peered over the edge. His eyes widened. "Over here!" he shouted. They all rushed to him. Wedged beneath the collapsed riverbank, buried in wet mud and debris, was a small, dark opening. And inside, just barely visible, a fragile paw twitched. Something was alive down there, something the lioness could not reach, but had refused to abandon. As the last rustle of grass swallowed the lioness and her cubs into the vast unknown, silence hung in the air like mist, thick and sacred. No one moved. No one spoke. The world had paused, as if nature itself was holding its breath. The rangers, gritty, seasoned men who had seen it all, stood still, eyes wide, some blinking back tears they'd never admit to. Rico finally broke the silence, his voice quiet, almost reverent. "She knew. She knew we would come." Elliot just nodded, watching the spot where the lioness had disappeared. "She didn't just trust us," he said. "She chose us." "No," one argued. "They couldn't. This wasn't just a moment. It was a revelation. In a place where humans were usually the threat, where wild animals lived by tooth and claw, a lioness had crossed the invisible line of fear and chosen to ask for help, and they had answered." The walk back to camp was quiet. No victory chants, no loud debriefing. Just the soft crunch of boots and the distant call of birds waking with the sun. When they returned, Rico immediately sent word to the Wildlife Council. The story spread like wildfire, not just because of the rescue, but because of what it meant. People across the world saw the photos, the lioness standing guard, the fragile cubs in the mud, the moment of reunion. But the image that caught everyone's breath was the one frame from the motion camera, the lioness, bathed in golden light, eyes staring into the lens with a haunting intelligence. It became a symbol of trust, of a bridge between wild instinct and human empathy. Journalists came, conservationists rallied, donations to the park surged. But Elliot stayed away from the spotlight. He preferred to walk the edges of the park alone, where the tall grass whispered and the air still carried the scent of the lioness. He visited the riverbend often, always stopping at the spot where the cubs had been saved. He never saw her again, but every so often he'd find fresh tracks, 3 sets, One large, two small. She was out there, watching, thriving. And somehow he felt that was enough. Months passed. The seasons shifted. The rains came and went. Life in Enleti National Park returned to its usual rhythm. But for the rangers and everyone who'd witnessed that day, things would never be the same. They had been reminded, shown, that the wild wasn't just a place of danger or wonder. It was a place of feeling, connection, even communication. One morning, as the sun rose and painted the sky in soft pink and gold, Rico stood at the front gate sipping his coffee. A young ranger approached, slightly out of breath. "Sir, we have a visitor." Rico turned. His heart skipped. It wasn't the lioness, but far off near the tree line, a young lion cub, now growing strong, stood still, head raised, eyes watching the gate. Then, as if remembering something, it turned and vanished into the trees. Rico smiled. She remembers. And so, this story didn't end in rescue. It began there, in that fragile, powerful moment where a mother asked and strangers answered. It was a story of trust built not on words, but on actions. Of a lioness who refused to give up, of a team that listened to more than just instincts, and of a bond, ancient, invisible, that connected them all. And maybe, just maybe, it's a reminder to us all that even in a world divided by species, language, and fear, there are moments when everything fades and what's left is something beautifully human, or perhaps something beautifully wild. If this story moved you, we invite you to help keep its message alive. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel to support more true stories from the wild. Stories that don't just entertain, but inspire compassion, respect, and awe for the natural world. And if you're able, consider donating to conservation efforts in your region. Because out there, beyond the fences and cameras, there's always another mother, another cry for help, and another chance for us to listen. Thank you for believing. Thank you for caring. And remember, in the heart of the wilderness, kindness is never forgotten.